I beat every other influencer in the game and won $100,000. This year, we're doing it even bigger, and I'm looking for one of you guys to be my partner with $1 million at stake. All you guys gotta do is make a post using hashtag PrizePicksW. Make a post, tell me why you deserve to be my partner, include screenshots of your winning, tell me your best prize pick story. Just convince me, because guys, I'm trying to win. I'm trying to repeat this. I'm not trying to give up this title. If you're chosen, you're gonna be flown out to Atlanta for an all-inclusive trip to the Prize Picks World Championships. This is gonna be crazy. So make your post, hashtag PrizePicksW. I am the current defending champion. There's no other team that you wanna be on. You guys have till November 6th to enter the competition. Hashtag PrizePicksW. Let's get this $1 million, baby! All right, boys, there's a lot of crazy going on in the world right now. The border's wide open. Gas prices are through the roof. You can't even buy egg anymore. It costs like the price of a house. Going crazy. That's why I think this election is probably one of the most important elections ever. And you guys all need to get out and vote. If you are not registered to vote, you guys need to go to sendthevote.com, all right? Because, guys, we can't just be tweeting about this shit. You can't be just complaining or talking to your boys or posting on X. You gotta actually get up off your and vote, all right? Don't be lazy. If you guys don't know how to vote, or you're not registered, or just for some reason you're not ready to vote, go to sendthevote.com. It has everything you need to make sure that you're registered to vote, and it's also going to make sure that your vote is counted. We need everybody's vote to count. Sendthevote.com is not a right-wing or left-wing website. It's just about making sure that everybody votes and everybody's vote is counted. So guys, seriously, like, talk to your boys around you. Like, if one of your boys is not registered to vote, chirp his. You can't be lazy. Like, I've been talking to people and they're like, oh, I'm not registered to vote, yet they have like a specific side they're choosing. Like, I don't know what you guys are thinking, but everybody needs to vote. Like, it's gonna be a close one, so get up off, don't be lazy. Go to sendthevote.com if you do not know how to vote. It has everything you need to register. Let's get into the podcast.
Do you think Trump wins?
I mean, I'm terrible at political predictions, so I'm going to say yes. If you'd asked me 3 months ago, I don't know if I would have said it. Well, 3 months ago, he was running against Biden, so I would have said yes then too. There were a couple of weeks after Kamala took over that seemed a little touch and go for the Trump campaign. But recently, it seems like all the momentum's on his side.
Did you see the thing recently? I'm sure you probably talked about this already because you do the daily pod, but did you see the thing recently where Kamala, there was someone who yelled in the audience, Jesus is Lord, and she was like, you're at the wrong rally?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah, it's amazing.
Like, my question, why would you say that? Or why would you be at the wrong?
Well, I guess she was talking about abortion.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think their excuse is that, well, she wasn't referring to that. She just meant, but of course, it's true though. Like, if you think Jesus is Lord, you are. The Kamala Harris rally is not for you. It's amazing that she would say that out loud, and it kind of shows. I'm not amazed by the sentiment. I know she hates Christians, but I'm amazed that she's willing to say that because this woman just has no political instincts. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a politician, certainly in modern American history, who has worse political instincts than she does. She just has no sense. Whereas, and she's going against Trump, who, whatever else you want to say about him, the guy's got great. We haven't seen a politician in my lifetime who has better instincts than him. He just has a feel for like what works. And he does, he went to the McDonald's the other day and he was, serving fries for a few minutes, and it just worked. It was like, it worked. It was funny. It was endearing. And so he's got a real good sense of that. And Kamala just has no sense for it at all, which is why I would think by all rights, she loses. I mean, if we still live in any kind of recognizable world, then by the rules of politics that have governed, the country up until this moment, by those rules, Trump should win. Like, for one thing, if you survive an assassination attempt while running for president, like in any other time in history, that alone should put you over the top. And then you take the second attempt and everything else too. He should win, but
seems like he's run even on Polymarket too. I don't know if you follow that, but it was like neck and neck, and now he's like 66% in the lead.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't.
I'm just wondering if it's going to be the repeat where it's like this, and it's like all the votes are counted.
That's why the disadvantage Trump's at is that he needs to win
In such a decisive manner.
Yeah, he needs to win, not just win, but he needs to win by a significant margin to avoid any of those kinds of scenarios. He could. I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm not a good political, like I said, I'm a terrible political prognosticator. So we could wake up the next day after the election and Kamala has won in some kind of electoral college landslide. Be surprised by that? Yeah.
That would suck so
That would suck.
bad. Imagine having to watch Kamala for the next 4 years. Or we get to watch Trump just run shit for the next 4 years.
Man.
It would
suck so bad.
It would suck for a lot of reasons. Could happen though. It could happen. I mean,
no. That'd be bad.
But I can also see a world. I can see a world where Trump wins in a landslide, where these swing states just go to him, all go to him, and next thing you know, you're looking at not only he wins the popular vote, and maybe he was the first Republican presidential candidate to do that since, I don't know, in decades.
Yeah.
I don't know who's the last presidential candidate or Republican to win the popular vote, and also he wins the electoral college landslide. Like that could happen. And if it does happen, then I think we'll all look back on it and say, well, of course that happened. Like, again, the guy survived an assassination attempt. He's running against Kamala Harris, one of the most unlikable presidential nominees we've ever seen. Obviously, he was going to win in a landslide. So, I don't know. We'll see.
Either way, do you think there's going to be some sort of outrage or unrest post-election?
100%, no
Yeah.
matter what.
Which one do you think would
I
be
think
worse?
if Trump wins.
If Trump
honestly.
wins, yeah.
You think
Look,
it's going to be worse?
Well,
Oh, yeah.
he had the
If he wins?
assassination attempt. People are crazy.
No,
about
if Trump loses.
it. If he loses, I don't think it'll be as bad as if he wins. The response from the people that don't like Trump's going to be way worse.
Yeah, if he loses, I don't think that, I know on the left, it's, January 6th. And of course, they've massively inflated, as we all know, what that event really was. But even that wouldn't, like, the federal government has spent 4 years trying to find anyone who was even in the vicinity on January 6th and throw them in prison for as long as possible. And so the chance of anything like that happening a second time is basically non-existent. So I think if Trump loses, there will be no real, I mean, a lot of us will be really upset, but we're not, there's not going to be mass rioting. If he wins, though, yeah, I would expect. I mean, the first time that he won in 2016, you had the Women's March shortly after that. You had people like screaming and crying in the street. And and we know the mass rioting that happened in 2020, which would not have happened if Trump wasn't, if a Democrat was in office, they wouldn't have done that. So I think it's going to be.
Why do you
rough.
think they keep trying to tie him to the Project 2025 thing when he's outwardly said so many times that he's not in support of that?
Well,
But they put it in their
'cause-
campaign ads and all that.
Yeah, well, they have no moral standards whatsoever, so they don't care. They don't mind lying shamelessly. I also think that Trump played that whole thing wrong. It's because he started disavowing it. He started disavowing Project 2025, and the problem is once you start doing that, and usually he's really good at this kind of thing. Like he doesn't do the whole "I disavow this." Like usually he refuses. When the media comes to him and says, "Well, do you disavow XYZ?" He'll refuse to do it because he knows that once you start playing that game with them, they'll never stop. Once you show weakness, they don't stop. With Project 2025, for whatever reason, I don't know if he got bad advice, but yeah, he started disavowing it pretty aggressively. And so instead, the left didn't say, "Oh, well, he disavowed it, so never mind." They said, "Okay, well, this is something he's worried about. This is a weak spot.
Let's focus on it.
Let's keep going." If he's obviously worried about being tied with Project 2025, so let's keep hitting it. So I think that's what happened there.
I think the scariest thing for me is the whole World War III thing. Do you see that? I don't know if it's true, but North Korea, did they officially put ground troops in Russia?
I didn't see that, but yeah, I mean, Trump, there were
10,000 soldiers.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I didn't see that.
I don't know.
There were no major wars, as Trump points it out all the time on the campaign trail. It's true. There were no major wars under his presidency. And, he doesn't want conflict, global conflict, which you would hope that any president, that's like a baseline that every president would get over, that they don't want global conflict. But we also know that's not the case. So,
but yeah, no president's been like that really besides him, right?
Yeah, especially
Republican or Democrat.
Yeah. We've had nonstop wars overseas for 25 years now until Trump. And then we had a respite, and then it started again, in Biden. Under Biden's administration, we got 2 major wars happening overseas that we are involved in some way,
That shit's scary.
Bro, all that shit.
Do you think that, and this is maybe out of pocket, but do you ever think that if Trump handled like the question or just talked about how if he ever was just like, you know what, I lost the 2020 election, that would do anything for him?
I don't think it matters.
You think it matters? Because a lot of people love to go back to that and like, why won't he just say, hey, you know what, I lost?
I mean, at this point, obviously he can't say that.
At this point, maybe not, but like maybe in the debate, because it was brought up a few times, and they just want to say, hey, let's move on. But it seems like a lot of people are waiting for him to just say that, just to see a change in character.
Yeah, I just don't know that it would matter. I think it'd be just like disavowing Project 2025. It doesn't, they're not going to then suddenly say, oh, he's not a threat to democracy anymore. It doesn't matter. It doesn't really even matter what he does or says.
Mm-hmm.
How many of these do you guys record in like a week?
Depends.
1 or 2.
We're gonna do 2 this week, but then next week we probably won't do 1. Just like depends. We try to do 1 a week. Yeah. What's your schedule like for content?
I mean, I do a daily podcast, so
Yeah.
it's every day.
That's the one on X, yeah.
Yeah,
is
it's
that?
on X. It's
Yeah.
on. It's everywhere. And then with the movie, I've been doing, on the promo tour. So
Am I racist? That's it's kind of like a little bit of like what we do on our other channel with Nelk in terms of like hidden camera, mic'd up,
yeah,
or like kind of like a Borat vibe. How did you come up with that idea to do that?
Well, so my first movie was called What is a Woman, came out a few years ago, and that was about the kind of trans insanity. And with that movie, it was more of like where I'm just going around asking questions, taking like a skeptical approach of asking questions. And with this movie, we knew we wanted to get into race and DEI and all this kind of stuff, but I didn't want to just repeat what we did with the other movie, and that's always a temptation is just to do exactly what you did before. And so we thought with this, it'd be interesting if instead the approach is, I'm not going to be skeptical towards these people. I'll just believe whatever they tell me. And I'll let them kind of guide me on my journey of my racial awakening journey. And so it starts with like, I'm just me as myself and I ask a question, I'm talking to these DEI experts, asking them questions. They're giving me answers. I'm believing whatever they tell me. And then it's like, okay, well, if that's true, where do I go next? And I'm putting their ideas into practice so they can kind of build. And we want to have this effect of like going down the rabbit hole. So by the end of the movie, it's completely insane. And it's because we're sort of showing like, this is what happens when you take these ideas seriously. So it's a little bit of a Borat, but it's not, because with Borat, it's like he's a character from the start of the movie.
Yeah. You turn into one as it goes.
Right. We wanted to have it's like where I have to adopt that persona because I'm trying to do the work, as they say, to become a, racially enlightened.
How many like insane people did you come across? I saw the scene where like the champagne, the dinner, and that like Indian kind of looking lady saying, I used to be a white woman. Like, is there any stories you can tell us? Like, what was the most insane person that you came across?
I mean, they're all insane. That was called Race to Dinner, which is a real thing. Like obviously this is all real. We didn't invent any of it. And Race to Dinner is you've got the Indian woman, Saira Rao is her name, and Regina Jackson's the black woman. And they go to dinner with white women and they sit at the table and they're paid thousands of dollars to call the white women racist for like 2 hours. And they just sit there and the white women are sitting around the table and they're getting just eviscerated by these 2 ladies who are calling them racist and just tearing them down for hours.
Crazy.
Bro, wait,
And-
But they
I'm
pay.
sorry.
Like, are they paying to get like
Yeah.
educated on
Hold on.
the
Yeah,
subject?
bro, I mean, that's what they think they're
That's
getting
what I
paid
mean,
for.
yeah.
Right.
That's absurd.
Wait, so why do they do that?
Yeah, so I'm trying to understand.
Sounds like a fetish.
I
It
really
is a
want to
little-
understand
it
like
is a little
I feel like Steiny would do that with black guys.
Get called a racist?
No, like you get paid to like have dinner with like black guys.
Yeah. No,
You
I
would
already
pay.
do that. What do you mean?
You would pay.
Maybe. It depends who it was.
It
I'm
does.
being
It
honest.
feels a little bit like a BDSM type of thing where they just like getting torn
Yeah.
apart. I don't know, but like I said, it's a real thing. When we started making this movie, I knew I wanted to get into one of those dinners. I wanted to see what that was like. We wanted to document it. I would have loved to actually sit at the table and be a part of it, so we called them up to see if we could document a dinner and if we could have and we told them it was one of our producers, could they actually be at the table? And they said that you have to be a woman to be at the table, like a real woman. They didn't say that, but that's what because they can't say, because then, of course, that raises the question, well, what's a woman? Which they can't answer. So they said that you have to be socialized as a woman to be allowed at the table. That's the way that they kind of try to thread that needle. And I wasn't socialized as a woman, so I couldn't sit at the table. But we found out that
what constitutes like socialized as a woman?
Well,
like,
right,
raised
exactly.
as a woman.
Right. Well, what does that mean? It doesn't really mean anything. What they were trying to say is like, no, you need to actually be a woman. You can't be a trans woman. You have to be a real woman. But they can't say that. So instead, they come up with some other way of saying it. So they say socialized. But we did find out that you can be a waiter. Like, it's okay if men are waiters at the dinner. In fact, they encourage that. They like the idea of white men serving them. And so that was our way in. And we found a way to set it up behind the scenes.
How did you do that? How did you do that on like the prank or like the logistics aspect? Like, how did you become the waiter?
I mean, we can't give away all the secrets, but it was we set it up so that, I'll say this, we rented the house where the dinner was at. We set up some catering for them, which is pretty nice of us. And I just happened to be one of the waiters. And the goal in the scene was I wanted to earn my place at the table. I wanted to start by waiting on them, and by the end of the scene, I wanted to be sitting at the table with them. And as you see in the movie, like I accomplish it. So
obviously this is real because you say that earlier, but I don't understand how there's this section of people that are just feeling bad because they're white. I don't understand what like this is a thing. This is a real thing.
Yeah, it's
like
a real
have
thing.
guilt
What,
because
can you break down the premise of what's going on for Brad?
No,
Yeah.
I understand the premise. What I'm trying to understand is you're telling me is there's just a whole group of people that feel bad because they're white.
Yeah, that's the idea.
White guilt
So-
is out there.
So where is this coming from? Is it just people are just waking up and they're like, I feel bad that I'm white?
I mean, that's a good question. I've thought about that a lot when we're making this movie. Is why would you go to that dinner? And I'm not as confused by the DEI race hustlers themselves, the con artists. I know what they're up to. They make money off of it.
Yeah, 100%.
Robin DiAngelo is infamously in this movie, and she wrote White Fragility. She's kind of like the godmother of left-wing racial ideology. And she's sold, I'm sure, millions of dollars worth of books, and she makes a lot of money. So that's what she's into it for. But yeah, the people that go to the Race to Dinner or they go to the seminars, why are they there? And I don't know exactly. Some people have theorized that it almost is like a little bit of like a weird
it's a
kink
fetish.
thing, that they like to be told that they're bad. I don't know. There might be that, but I also think there's a spiritual element to it where these people are struggling with like guilt and these kinds of really human experiences, but they don't have a religious framework for understanding any of that stuff. It's like, so me as a Christian,
You go to
If I-
confession.
right? Well, yeah, as a Catholic in particular.
Yeah.
So if I feel guilty about something, I feel guilty if I do something wrong, but I know that, okay, well, I know why I feel good. I've done something wrong. I can confess. I can find forgiveness in my faith. And I have that framework for understanding it. But these people have no religion, so they don't understand why they feel this way. And then you've got these race hustlers who come along and they say, well, I know why you're feeling that way. I'll tell you why you're feeling that way. It's because you're white. And they become sort of like the priests and priestesses of this new religion, kind of guiding them on a spiritual path to forgiveness, except that they find out that there is no forgiveness. You can't actually be forgiven. That's the trick at the end of it. So you can spend all the money on the seminars and buy the books and all that kind of stuff. You can go to the Race to Dinner. You can go 5 times to a Race to Dinner, and you'll still be just as racist at the end of it as you were at the beginning.
Yeah, I was wondering. So do they leave there in the same mindset, like feeling the same way, or do they seem changed at all?
Yeah, because you can never be not racist. That's part of the deal. If you're white anyway, if you're white, you can never be not racist. That they tell you that. In fact, I ask this question in the movie multiple times. I say like, well, if I don't want to be racist, how do I rid myself of this racism virus that I have? And the answer is you can't. Robin DiAngelo tells me that in any given moment, you can be less racist or more racist, but you can never be not racist if you're white.
So why do you think this is only applying to white people?
That's the ideology. That's left-wing racial. That is, when we talk about DEI or anti-racism or CRT, like whatever word we're using, What we're really talking about is basically left-wing racial ideology, and their ideology is, I mean, if you were to boil it down and make it as simple as possible, their ideology is that all white people are inherently racist. White people are the villains of history. All of societal ills ultimately go down to white people and the systemic racist structures that they've set up. And if you're not white, you're not racist. And that's pretty much it. Like, that's what they believe. And everything kind of grows from that root.
Doesn't that just then it gets kind of like directly or indirectly then just reverse racism? It's just racism as well.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even call it reverse racism. I mean, racism is just racism, you know?
Right.
So if a black person is racist to a white person, that's just racism. It's not even reverse racism. But on left-wing gender or racial ideology that we're exploring in the movie, it's not possible for a black person to actually be racist against a white person. So a black guy could run up and like say, "Die, whitey," and punch you in the face, and that's not a racist attack, according to the left, according to these people in the movie.
They actually said that, like.
Yeah, I mean,
they said stuff like that.
That's an example that I'm coming up with, but they would absolutely say, no matter what a black person does, they definitionally cannot be racist.
Who's making these definitions? That's my question.
Well, that's always a good question. I mean, that's always the question. And a lot of this goes to, like, you know, these are academic ideas that started being popularized in academia, oftentimes in like the 60s and 70s and 80s. And it's the same thing with gender ideology, you know, the idea that men can be women if they want to be and vice versa. These are ideas that started in kind of the academic realm and kind of stayed there for a long time, for decades, until they started filtering down from there into the general population. And we saw in 2020 with the racial stuff, that was like this moment of just explosion where all of these ideas came pouring out and just took over society in a way that they hadn't, you know, I mean, they'd existed before, but they just became, you know, suddenly it's like everyone is walking around talking about systemic racism and all this stuff. So, and that's usually the way it goes with these ideas, is they start up there in academia, and then there are things that happen that allow that class of people to kind of use those events as a Trojan horse to get these ideas out into the general public.
It just seems like it's all just to create like more hate, make people hate each other more. Whether it's we're talking about the men woman thing or we're talking about the racism thing, it's just like, why is it pushed to some extent
That's what makes me sad too. It's like, because I feel like as, you know, a society, I feel like we do like love each other like a lot, like black, white people, whatever your ethnicity is. Like, I feel like there's not a lot of racism going on. So it sucks to see when, like, whether it's like the George Floyd incident or something, like they'll just pick like 0.1% of examples and just like broadcast that to the world and then try to tell all black people that like white people hate you. When in reality, I feel like there is like not that much racism.
Yeah, I mean,
anymore. I don't know.
I agree. I mean, we talk about it in the movie. We start the movie talking about like in the 90s. When I grew up in the 90s, and wasn't perfect. It wasn't a perfect time by any means. Like, there's never gonna be a perfect time, but there were racial, you know, there was race riots in LA. There was the OJ verdict and that sort of thing. But generally speaking, it was not a topic of constant conversation. I went to school, public school, with, you know, very diverse school. And we didn't sit around talking about, they weren't like drilling racism into our heads constantly. We weren't talking about systemic racism and all this stuff. It was basically okay. Like, it was as okay as you can expect. You're always going to have racism in society.
Always.
We're humans are tribalistic. And so that's going to be one of those.
You can never eradicate it.
Right.
Completely.
You can't eradicate it completely. You almost have to acknowledge that going in, that it's a bad thing. Racism is bad. Hatred is bad. Envy, greed, all these things are bad. But if you ever have a plan to get rid of those things entirely, that's always a bad sign, because it's just not possible. You can't actually do that. So you have to realize that.
Like,
but anyway,
theoretically, in a perfect world, you'd obviously want to have no racism.
Right.
You'd want to have no rapists, no murderers. But like, it seems like that's not, unless it's like a euphoria.
exactly.
It's not really
if it's like a
possible.
utopia, but you have to start with
Utopia.
you have to start with the basic recognition of just reality. That any plan you have to make society better has to start in reality. If you have some plan to improve society that isn't based in reality, then it's not a good plan. And it usually ends in horrifically, you know. Any attempt to make a utopian society always creates the opposite. But yeah, in the 90s, it was like, it was, you know, it wasn't this constant focus. It felt like, And I think we got as close as you could possibly expect any society to ever get to being like a quote unquote post-racial society,
Right.
which again, that can't really exist, but it's as close as you're going to ever see. And then Obama's elected, the first black president, and it would seem almost like ironically that things started trending the opposite direction. It was
Wouldn't that be like a legit like sign that society as a whole is not racist, that the majority of society elected a black leader? Like I thought that would be like, as a society,
least
we're
in
like
America, yeah,
factually
right.
not.
Yeah, you would think so. And I was not an Obama supporter or an Obama voter, but you would think that at least one of the positives that would come out of that is we could say, okay, well, systemic racism obviously isn't a thing anymore. We don't have to worry about America being a racist society. We just elected a black guy to lead the country. But I think on the left, they kind of recognize that, and they didn't want people to draw that conclusion. They didn't want us to say that, okay, well, racism isn't a big deal. We don't have to worry about it anymore, because it's such a potent tool for control for them. So they had to work overtime after Obama was elected to create incidents of racism, to like find racism in society. And that's when you started hearing about, it was after Obama that, BLM came about, and we started hearing about all these police shootings that were, or alleged examples of police brutality that turned out not to be, things like microaggressions, these kinds of concepts that didn't exist prior to Obama. They all came out because I think that it was like, okay, now we have to work overtime to convince people that they're racist.
So we're saying that they are the people who are doing this, them, for this example, what you spoke to, is the left?
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, like the left is very broad. That's
Yeah.
it's almost like lack of a better term. I just say the left.
Yeah.
But we could narrow it down in this case to the left wing advocates of leftist racial ideology. Those people in particular, like in the 90s, it was Al Sharpton was one of the big. It's like if you thought of that group, he'd be the first name that would come to mind. It's like those kinds of people after Obama had to work overtime to convince us that we're a racist society. And then what ends up happening is that you actually become a more racist society. Like racism becomes a bigger factor.
Well, it just seems interesting to think that only white people could be racist. That's a crazy thing, I think.
Yeah, well, it doesn't make any sense. Of course, it's not true.
But that is racist in and of itself, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because then it's like saying that's the basis of racism, is that because your skin is this color, like you're not going to agree, or you're not going to like this other group, but because of the color of your skin, that you're just racist. I don't get it.
Yeah, right. I mean, racism, in my mind, racism is not a complicated subject. It's if you think that any group of people is inherently
lesser than
you,
yeah.
Inferior.
If you have hatred or animosity for an entire group of people just because of who they are, then you're racist. That's what racism is. And if you don't feel that way about other races, then you're not racist. You might have many other flaws, like we all do, but you're not racist.
Yeah.
And so it is pretty simple that way. But the people that promote this stuff, they don't want you to see racism as a simple concept like that. Because then you could easily say to yourself, okay, well, if that's what racism is, that doesn't include me. I'm not racist. So I don't have to listen to these people. I don't have to buy the books and all that. But they don't want that. They're like, no, you don't tune us out. In fact, if you think you're not racist, that's all the more evidence that you are. So you got to buy even more books now and go to more seminars. And
so it seems like a money thing. I don't get it.
Yeah, what's the agenda with that, in your opinion?
I think it's money. I think it's money's always involved in these kinds of things. Power, influence. When you have people coming to you trying to find out how to be a good person, there's a lot of influence in that. And so I think there's that as well.
I think those stories also do just sell as well. Like even in the media, right?
Numbers, yeah. Well, they started.
Well, they do it with Trump all the time too. They push it on him, right?
Well, I forgot there was something where like the search terms for like these sort of
that's what I think too. If there's
like going crazy in media because they were getting views, they were getting engagement, or would it be like a news article or whatever on social media, etc. It also became a big thing that like, oh, if we use this as a headline,
it just sells. If there's
systemic
1,000,
racism is a great example, and it's just like numbers are going up.
Yeah, exactly. I mean that's it's all part of the narrative, and they have the media even still has like an incredible power to set narratives, even the mainstream media, even though we all kind of think that like they're not relevant anymore because we have the internet, we have like anybody can make a show and reach millions of people. you don't need cable news and the mainstream media outlets anymore, which is true.
Yeah.
But they still have, but those like
Older
legacy
people a lot too.
It's still an
Yeah.
age
Still
group that's
watch.
still
That's
only
but
consuming that.
the most recent case I can think of is like Tyreek Hill. Obviously, you saw that situation, right?
Yeah,
It's a little bit. It was a few months ago, but that goes so viral. It's talked about heavily for 2 or 3 weeks.
exactly.
So
And
when that-
everybody just assumes that, or just immediately buy the narrative that he was a victim of police brutality, right? And then you watch the video, and at least from my perspective, you watch the body cam video, and it's like, okay, I mean, just like it's not that hard when you're interacting with the cops. It's not that hard to avoid a scenario where you get arrested or thrown on the pavement. Just be like a minimum level of respect and decorum, and don't go out of your way to be confrontational.
Does any part of you think that the cops could have handled the situation a little different?
I don't think it was
Hold
racist.
on.
I don't think they were racist. I think they should have let Tyreek go to the game.
Well, they weren't
for
white,
sure.
so they couldn't be racist, right? I
Huh?
think it was a
Tyreek had to
Hispanic-
get on the field,
I think it
though,
was a
like-
Hispanic.
He still
cop, right?
played.
I know, but
He scored a touchdown that game.
Yeah, he was still playing, and
He
right,
did
they weren't
his
even white
celebration was pretty cool. I
Yeah.
don't know if you saw a celebration.
I think. Listen,
cops.
I think it was because
I think I saw it. Yeah.
but there's
I
a difference between police brutality and racism too, right?
you got to ask him.
I mean,
bro.
look, I think in that case, I watched the video one time, and
it was rolling up the window and it's tinted. They can't see. They're like,
yeah, that was the
Yeah.
thing.
That's what
You
it
cannot roll the. Okay, he got pulled over, I think, because he was speeding, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I've been pulled over for speeding. I got pulled over for speeding a few months ago, and I was going like 8 miles over the limit or something. It was crazy. I mean, usually they give you 10 miles and they don't, over the limit before they pull you over.
Yeah.
I got pulled over for like 8 or 9 miles over the limit, and it's annoying. But like, I still got pulled over, and I was respectful to the police officer. It's you don't have to get out and kiss his boots, but you're just like, you're not trying to start an argument with him. And because you also know that if I do want to argue my way out of this ticket, this is not the guy to argue with. You go to court to argue that. This is not the time for that. But I also know that if I was driving a car with tinted windows, and that cop is trying to talk to me about the ticket, and I try to roll up my tinted windows so he can't see me, yeah, my ass is going to get pulled out and thrown on the pavement too. Because from the cop's perspective, it's like, why are you doing that? Like, what are you doing that you don't want me to see right now?
yeah.
And we've also seen so many videos of how it can go when cops are trying to pull somebody over for just a speeding violation or some simple traffic ticket. And next thing you know, they're getting shot at. So they have to be thinking about that too. So I always I give the cops some grace in these things, even if they're like, I think in that video, they're probably a little bit
aggressive.
Yeah,
a little more
they were
aggressive than they
aggressive.
They
need
probably
to be.
shit
for
themselves
sure.
when they found out it was Tyreek. Too.
Well, they should have handled it a little different.
Yeah.
I think.
Right,
It's
but
like,
and I could say it's like, yeah, okay, it seems like there's a little like you're having a bad day or something, but it's not racism, number one, and number two, I have more sympathy for the cop in that case than I do for Tyreek Hill, because Tyreek Hill, you're a millionaire athlete, you're getting pulled over. I know it's an inconvenience, just deal with it, buddy. It's not a big deal. From the cop's perspective, it's like they deal with, first of all, cops every day are dealing with like the dregs of society. I mean, they're the ones who are, where did that cop just come from? For all I know, he just came from a domestic violence call or something. And he's just dealing with like horrible people all the time.
It's true.
And that weighs on your psyche. And also you're aware that at any moment, any person you're interacting with could just pull out a gun and try to kill you. And that happens all the time to cops. You and we don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
Most of the time. And so that makes them a little jumpy. So, I tend to just I have a little grace, and I give a little leeway. And I think more people should. I don't know. It's not about.
There's another really viral situation I saw the other day. I don't know the person's name, but it's a black trans woman. A cop was knocking at her door, and he opened the door, and she immediately stabbed him, and he had to gun her down in the hallway. Do you know the name?
What's that?
Do you recall the name?
I didn't see that.
This was viral.
And I think it was actually not even trans. I think it was an actual woman, like a biological, I believe it was a former basketball player or something like that. I don't remember her name. But the cop was responding for a because somebody called and said, can you go check on this person? Because they might be having some kind of mental episode. And the cop knocks on the door, and the woman opens the door and immediately starts slicing at him with a butcher knife. And the thing is, if you watch that video, it's like a horrifying video. It looks not real, but it is. He's backpedaling down the hallway, pointing a gun at her, telling her to stop, and she's chasing him with a butcher knife like a horror movie, like some slasher film. he waits a long time
Yeah.
to actually pull the trigger. And I think he waits so long because he's worried about, he's aware of the fact that he's on body cam, and he's aware that there are people out there that if this goes one way and that woman dies, there are gonna be people who just want to throw him in prison for it. And fortunately he survives, but you know, I think he should have pulled.
You can see in the video, he's like, when he goes down to make his radio call, like blood dripping from his face in the video.
Because
She had already stabbed him.
Yeah.
Well,
wow.
She stabbed him. She slashed at him when she opened the door. He does not fire. He backpedals down the hallway, trying to give her a chance to stop. She chases him the whole way down the hallway and then slashes him. And only at that point does he fire his weapon. If it were me, I would have fired it like the moment after the first swipe. I'm gonna, you're done. I'm not taking a chance with that. But I think he took a chance because, probably he's aware of. This is the situation cops are in, where when someone tries to kill them, they're aware of the fact that, okay, I can let them kill me and I'll die, or I can stop them from killing me and I might go to prison for that. That's like the ultimate lose-lose scenario that these guys are in.
Yeah.
I mean,
there's something else I see now too, is a lot of people like to, and I think they do it it goes viral on TikTok, but so many people just like to go up to a cop and say, name and badge number, just for no reason. I don't know if you guys ever see those.
No, I haven't.
Oh.
But they just do it, and it seems like they're kind of trying to take advantage of the situation and see what they can get out of the cop, because the cop now knows that he's being filmed.
yeah.
And they're like playing the situation to their advantage just for clicks, and it's just such a stupid thing if you really think about it.
It's
Like,
very stupid.
why are you going out of your way to just mess with this guy? And they
Yeah.
just do it to go viral. So I think that with the videos and the body cams, it's making things a lot worse than it needs to be.
And you're antagonizing people who, I mean, look,
You're just provoking situations
Right.
at this point.
and we need people to do this job. I don't want to be a police officer. Like I want people doing that job because I want to live in a safe society, and I want to have somebody to call if I need them, but I don't want to do that job. You're not paid all that much. You could get killed at any moment, and you could also go to jail if things go wrong. So it's like, it's a pretty thankless job. And the more thankless we make it, the less people will be willing to do it.
Yeah.
And then pretty soon you're living in communities, and this is the case currently in a lot of communities in this country, where they don't have enough cops. And there are some real, there are some real drawbacks to that.
Yeah.
Needless to say.
All right, guys, I'm going to interrupt the pod really, really quick. I want to let you guys know about my favorite healthy snack, board jerky. All right, you guys know, you've seen me. I'm trying to be a little more healthy these days. I was getting too many comments, you guys telling me I look pregnant and shit. I was staying up all night crying. So now I'm into healthy snacks, and board jerky is one of my favorites. This jerky, if you guys try it, I don't even have to say it, try it for yourself. The quality of the jerky is absolutely unbelievable. And I'm a big jerky guy, and this jerky is by far the best. I'm traveling a lot all the time, so I always have board jerky on me when I get hungry. There's 4 different flavors. My favorite's the original. The macros are unbelievable. There's lots and lots of protein. So it's just a great healthy snack. Keep the barrel in check. But yeah, trust me, if you guys like jerky, try this out. And when you try it, you'll thank me. It's available on Amazon.com. The reviews are going through the roof. Everybody loves it. So go to Amazon.com right now. Give board jerky out a try. Keep it in your gym bags. Keep it in your backpacks. This is my favorite healthy snack. It's on me all the time. Amazon.com, board jerky. Let's get back on the pod.
I guess kind of switching it up, but I don't know how you feel about this. I've been trying to talk to Brad. We've talked about it a few times, of him maybe
Where are you going with this?
What?
You
Well,
feel like you're about to troll
considering
me.
becoming a female just to compete
Got
in
it,
the
got
world's
it,
strongest
got it.
woman,
Got it.
Yeah.
just because he could get the gold.
A troll.
Yeah.
So if your friend could become a champion, but he has to do that, would you support him?
I mean, look, I respect trolling. I consider myself an artist as well in the trolling arts. So I would respect it. I would never tell you not to. I mean,
Just to get the W.
Dude, you could be I'm telling
Dude,
you.
I do.
Be a
I
gold
first of all,
medalist.
I've never considered this.
Well, you're not competitive, I feel like, bro.
here's what I'll say though. If you do that, don't change don't shave the beard, don't cross dress. Just go 100% as you look right now, and just say, I'm a woman though.
It just reminds me of that South Park episode where he's like, I want a bitch. He's like,
If you guys ever notice how come South Park, they're the goats, they can do whatever they want, and
'Cause
no
it's a
one ever
cartoon.
comes
It's a
after them.
Cartoon,
it's a
yeah.
cartoon.
It's a cartoon, and they also got grandfathered in. I mean,
Family
Yeah.
Guy too.
Heavily.
Family Guy, and I haven't watched those shows recently, but South Park did a trans episode like
They did that
15
years ago. Yeah.
It was like 15 years ago. I remember.
Yeah.
I remember when I watched that episode when Mr. Garrison becomes a woman, and just whenever it first aired, and it was almost like I hadn't even heard of some of these concepts. It was so early, but they were way ahead of the ball. But I think then they get kind of grandfathered in. The question is whether a comedy show, a mainstream comedy show, could come along today and tell those kinds of jokes. Probably not.
Well, Dave Chappelle tried it, right? I mean, you can never cancel Dave Chappelle, but he did a little bit on one of his most recent specials and got a bunch of backlash. But I think it ultimately worked out better for
Just
him.
makes you bigger.
Yeah.
Does that ever scare you how far you can take things without like fearing being canceled?
Yeah, I don't worry about getting canceled because for me, it's like, first of all, I've been canceled so many times at a certain point. It's diminishing returns for the people that are canceling you. And after you've been canceled, after you've had the mob coming after you on a large scale a few times, if you can, that's one of the advantages of cancel culture. I think it's also why it's kind of petering out. I think is that if that happens to you, you got the mob coming after you, demanding the apology, telling you you're a horrible person, and you just refuse to apologize, and you continue doing what you're doing before and don't change a thing. Well, now you've kind of incapacitated them, and the next time they try to do it, it doesn't matter because they know how it's going to go. And that's why I think cancel culture, it's still a real thing, but I don't think it's like the height of cancel culture was probably 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, it's definitely going down.
And it's because of this, because you just needed people, you needed some people who were willing to say the things and piss everybody off. And then when everyone says, you need to apologize for this, they would look at the mob and say, no, I don't apologize. And Chappelle did that. And once you have enough people doing that, then it just kind of, you see how teethless they actually are.
It's crazy how much has changed over the last like 4 or 5 years.
So much. Bro.
Like 4 or 5 years ago, you really couldn't say much on the internet. And now it seems like people are saying like the most extreme shit possible just to go viral sometimes.
Yeah. And what I want to ask you about your recent movie is, have you noticed like it being pushed a little bit less? Or I saw something about someone's not reviewing it. It's not getting as much press because it is a little controversial.
Yeah,
I mean, Netflix, huh?
No, but I'm saying like I think Joe Rogan actually talked about it, about how he saw that it's getting pushed less or there's less reviews. Certain people aren't reviewing it because it's so controversial.
Yeah. We got 0 mainstream film critic reviews. So of the mainstream film critics that write for whatever New York Times and Wall Street Journal and that you see on Rotten Tomatoes, like 0, none of them reviewed the film. Even though, we released it in theaters, it debuted in the top 5 in the box office. It is right now the top documentary of the decade for box office returns.
Wow.
It's like it's top 35 in the genre all time. So it had real success in the box office. Now it's on Daily Wire, available on dailywire.com. But in spite of that, like the film critics just pretended it didn't exist and refused to review it, which I think is probably, I don't know if it's the first time ever, but it's pretty uncommon that a movie can be widely released in theaters, debut in the top 5 in the box office, and not be reviewed by a single mainstream critic. But that's what happened here. And
why do you think that is?
I think because the subject matter is too controversial for them. They don't like me. And we know that part of it because we sent screeners to all the critics and we got some responses back from some of them saying like, I hate Matt Walsh. I wouldn't review this if my life depended on it, And also I think, and this is maybe, I'm biased obviously, but I think it's a good movie and it's funny. And, you could, no movie's perfect. Like you could try to find criticisms here and there, but I think they only wanted to review it if they could give it like a 0 out of 5 stars, say it's the worst movie of all time. It's not funny. It's lame. It's terrible. If we gave them a movie like that, if we put a movie out that was actually bad, then we would have gotten all the mainstream film critic reviews because they could have trashed it, which is what they want to do.
Couldn't they just do that anyways?
They could do it anyway. They could, but it just wouldn't be credible. Like you can't, anybody who watches the movie, again, it doesn't, I'm not saying you have to think it's a perfect film, but you got to at least admit like, it was well made. It's pretty funny. And I think for the film critics, they don't even want to say that. And they're worried that if a film critic were to come out and say, I didn't like the movie, it's a bad movie, Matt Walsh is a terrible guy, he's evil, But it was kind of funny in parts. If a film critic even says that, their audience is going to tear them apart for that. Like their readership's going to be mad that you platformed Matt Walsh and you said you liked the movie, sort of. You said something nice about it, and they don't want to deal with it, so they just pretend it doesn't exist because they're worried about their own readership. And by the way, we saw that we didn't get any film critic reviews from mainstream critics, but we did have some journalists from I think the Washington Post, the New Yorker, and a couple other publications. They weren't film critics, but they were journalists who did watch the movie and talked about, their experience with the movie and said some nice things. Like they criticized me and the film, but they said some nice things about it. And that's how their readership responded. The readership was really angry at them for saying anything nice about the movie.
I have a question for you specifically, in your journey in all of this. What made you want to get started in this sort of genre? In this kind of, I don't know if it's called counterculture, but viewing of culture in the way that you view it. Have you always been that way? Growing up, are you this is weird, I want to talk about it? How did you get towards that? Not obviously not the specific topics, but in general.
You mean for making movies or just in general?
I guess in general, and then what made you go towards these specific topics?
Yeah, I think I've always been, right wing, and so right wing is counterculture. That's what the counterculture is, and I've always been that.
But wouldn't have liberalism or left wing had been the counterculture for so long though?
Yeah, exactly. It was, and that's but the left now owns the culture. They own all the institutions. They own all the Fortune 500 companies. They own academia and media and the federal government. So they are, you can't be the counterculture when all the major institutions are owned by you. And so now they are the culture. They're the dominant culture. And if you oppose them, then you're the counterculture. Which is also, by the way, why I think the left, they don't really, their comedy isn't good anymore. They forgot how to be funny. They forgot how to make good art. And I think this is one of the reasons why, that it's hard to make compelling art and compelling comedy.
Yeah.
That's defending powerful institutions.
I want to ask you about SNL recently. People are showing them a lot of love because it seems like they are getting a little bit more edgier with they're doing a bunch of skits making fun of influencers, Kamala. Have you noticed that at all? That they're being a little bit more edgier?
I have noticed that a little bit. I haven't watched a full SNL episode in I don't know how long, decades probably. But I see the clips when they come up on YouTube. I think like most people, I have been impressed.
Seems like they're shitting on Kamala a bit.
Yeah. So
I don't know. I mean, I think their Kamala impression, the Maya Rudolph impression, is pretty lame. It's pretty tame. You could tell that they're
trying, at least a bit.
They're trying a little bit, but they don't want to actually insult her.
Mm-hmm.
But even so, I mean, I every once in a while I'll see a skit from SNL where I'm kind of impressed. I'm like, this is okay. Maybe you're getting your funny bone back a little bit. I don't know. And every once in a while they kind of they lightly tread somewhere where you're sort of impressed that they were willing to go there at all. But the bar's pretty low these days. And I think it's because on the left, comedy has been dead for. I mean, when's the last time? What's the last funny major studio comedy film to come out? Unless you're counting these superhero
we should actually
movies.
see if we can answer that.
It's been a while.
The Interview.
There's got to be some more recent than that.
So good.
But that was like 10 years ago.
Yeah,
right?
that was if I'm answering that question, it's The Interview.
Yeah, because I always felt, and I didn't see that one, but to me it seemed like 2012 to 2014 was the end of mainstream comedy, and then it just went away for like a decade. But you think it was more recent than that?
Yeah, I'm trying to think, but there's got to be something.
No, bro, it's The Interview. It was the last one.
That was like controversial and funny.
Yeah, it's so good.
Maybe you're right, dude.
Because that was back when, I mean, you had like the early 2000s into the early part of the 2010s when you had.
When did Bruno come out?
Yeah, so I mean that was
Sacha Baron Cohen when he did Bruno. Bruno was amazing.
2010. I mean, the first Borat was 2006 or 7, I think. And then it was right around like 2013ish that they just stopped making comedies, and they haven't really done it since. And I think this is part of the reason why, where it's like you can't. There's so many rules now. You think
stand-up is kind of the last place that that form of comedy exists?
Yeah, and there's a lot of funny stand-up out there, but even the funny stand-ups these days they probably wouldn't identify themselves as conservative, but they're not leftist. Like they're kind of right of center at least. Guys like Shane Gillis or whoever. I mean, he's not. Yeah, I wouldn't call him conservative, but he's not a liberal. So you got to kind of be like on this side of the center, or the right side of the center at least, to do funny comedy these days. It seems like, unless there's some hilarious leftist out there that I'm not aware of. Maybe there is.
The
But
talk show host too. I didn't even realize, because we just did Trump and we asked them about all the different talk show hosts, and like I never even watched them, but just like even seeing their responses to that, like Jimmy Kimmel,
it's
Colbert,
funny.
they're all like, all they do is just trash Trump every single show.
and they trash him, but
It's so weird.
in a way that's not funny. Like you could make fun of Trump in a funny way, and there are a million funny Trump impersonations out there. Even the Trump impersonation on SNL now is pretty funny. It took him a long time to find a funny one, but the guy who does it now is funny. So you could be funny and make fun of Trump, obviously, but the problem is that when they make fun of him, they just hate him, and they're not even trying to be funny. It's just like there's so much like hatred and contempt in their jokes about Trump that it's not funny. And I think especially to make a parody or a satire of someone, to impersonate someone in a funny way, you have to have a little bit of almost like affection for them.
Yeah.
At least a little bit, where you know, so like the guy on SNL now, I don't know who it is who does the Trump impersonation, but it's funny. And you could tell that that guy, I'm sure he's probably a liberal, but I don't think he's like seething with rage at Trump, because he's studied him enough to pick up the mannerisms. And I don't know, if you're just blind with rage, that's not a good starting point for comedy. It seems to me.
Going back to I am racist. Is there any party when you do these? Because it is like a documentary as well. Do you ever have like empathy, or do you ever change up how you feel, or do you always just stand on going in there how you feel? It's how you're gonna come out. Because you do talk to so many different people, and maybe one of them has made you think differently.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly moments in making this film where we talked to people who I definitely empathized with, and but it was usually like we went and talked to. There's a scene where we go to a biker bar. Actually, it's here in Tennessee, this biker bar, and they've got like Confederate flags hanging on the walls and all that. And we talked to them about these racial issues. And the reason we go there is because if you listen to the media, you would expect to find nothing but virulent racism from these people. And we talk to them, and what we find is that they're all just saying, "Hey, man, I don't care what color you are. We all bleed the same. If you're black, it's fine. We can still be friends. I'm not focused on it." That's what we heard from them. And then we went down to New Orleans to the black community, the poor black community in New Orleans in the city, and talked to them, and we heard the exact same message, the exact same thing of, "Hey, it doesn't. I'm not focused on race. We all bleed the same." They both said the exact same phrase. And so, yeah, having those kind of conversations with those people, I feel for them. I relate to them. But when I'm talking to these, when you're talking to somebody like Robin DiAngelo, who's pushing this stuff, it's like harming society. She's harming people in a real profound way, harming society. I don't feel bad for her. And when we're putting things on, when we're getting footage that's going to be very embarrassing for her and probably destroy her career, which is exactly what happened. I mean, her career is over. I don't lose a second of sleep over that. Because number one, you had it coming. Number two, you brought it on yourself. And really, we're providing you an opportunity to say what you think and to live by your own, principles. And if anyone ends up really horrifically embarrassed in this film or our last film, which a lot of people are embarrassed, it's like that was on them. They didn't have to make those choices. And the other thing too is that in this movie, we brought up Borat earlier, and I think Borat's hilarious. But when you watch that movie, who is he like putting on camera? Who is he embarrassing? He's embarrassing normal people for the most part, just like normal everyday people that he's kind of tricking them into saying and doing embarrassing things. But we don't do that. We're punching up. Like, we're going for powerful people, Ivy League educated, powerful, influential, wealthy people. That's who we're going after. And we said going into making this movie that if there's ever a scene where we do talk to normal people, in those scenes, I'm going to be the butt of the joke, not them, because I don't want to embarrass some normal person, and then now it lives forever, in this film, and they got to deal with it. I don't want to do that. So when we went to the biker bar, we went down to New Orleans. I was the stupid one saying stupid things and just getting them to react to it, and they reacted like normal people. They came out looking great.
Yeah, there is a lot of people that do like to challenge the normal people, the college students that like. We'll use Charlie Kirk as an example, who's so far educated about against everyone he goes up against. So you're saying basically like that's beneath you, and you don't want to try people like that. That's just
That's a little different, and because the college students, I've done that too. I've done the campus talks, and we do a Q&A. And first of all, that's a very different thing because you're holding an event, and you're speaking, and people show up and they want to challenge you. Like they made the effort to come and challenge you on camera. There's certainly no trickery involved. It's like, and so I put that in the category of, okay, well, if you get embarrassed there, I mean, you
signed up for that.
You brought it up, right? You volunteered for it. So there are videos of me floating around out there. Matt Walsh destroys woke college kid, and it's always the same thing. I'm at a giving a talk. It's a Q&A.
I love those videos though.
They are
Yeah,
great.
they're fun. Now I do think
those always bang on YouTube too.
They
Sad
do great.
destroys in capital letters.
They go crazy. Shapiro
They
did
do
1
it
million
too.
guaranteed.
Yeah, Shapiro's got 1 million of them.
They did it on TikTok.
Shapiro used to be dope at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is kind of like
love
I will
that
say
shit.
I haven't done a college talk in a while. I didn't do any. for this
And by the
past
way, I
semester.
wasn't trying to like throw shade at Charlie Kirk. I'm just wondering if that does
Yeah, no,
anything
it's
besides
a fair
views.
it's a fair point. It's a fair point. But yeah, I think there's a difference. And for Charlie, he's like, it's a debate. Let's debate. Which is different from the whole Borat thing of I'm going to create this elaborate scenario where you don't even really understand what's going on, and you're going to end up embarrassed in a movie that millions of people see. And yeah, like I said, we did a similar thing with this movie, Am I Racist? But we were making it for specific groups of people, not for just average, everyday,
Yeah.
folks.
Yeah, I was wondering
We're
what.
probably pretty guilty of that.
Well, you never know now what's for educational purposes and what's for views too. So
Right. I mean, it's there's nothing wrong. Like, there's nothing wrong with getting views. We all need that's part of the business we're all in. You gotta, that's so I don't know. And I mean, there are plenty of times where I have, like I said, going back to those college videos. Yeah, you could look at some of those videos and you're like, well, that was, yeah, I got some blue-haired woke college student trying to argue with me and prove that women have penises or something, and it's like it's pretty low. It's like literally low-hanging fruit in a lot of different ways, and it's pretty easy to embarrass them. So, but like I said, they kind of bring it on themselves.
yeah,
Going back to the presidential thing, not so much the presidential thing, but America in general, and like escaping, I don't know, the grip that the military industrial complex has on us. Like talking about the wars and going back to war, continuing wars like during Biden or whatever, and during Trump there was none. Do you think we ever actually escape that? Because it seems as though like America's sort of built on this, seemingly from the outside looking in, like the funneling of money to these giant corporations to continue whatever conquest that they have involved in different parts of the world. Do you ever think we get out of that?
I think to get out of it is a full-on dismantling of. It's like, well, Trump used to, in his 2016 campaign, especially, "drain the swamp" was a big was a big slogan.
Yeah.
I think then he got into office and found out that draining the swamp is a lot harder than you might think, because the swamp is like everybody. I mean, the swamp is
Deep.
yeah. If you want to drain the swamp, it means you're firing thousands of federal employees, and then it's also a weird thing because it's like, you can't do it all yourself, so you almost need the swamp to work with you a little bit in its own dismantling. So it's a hard thing to do, but that's what it would require. And I hope that if Trump wins,
But do you think we ever will? Because it just seems like,
if I were being cynical about it, I don't think we ever will. But
yeah,
it's possible. You just need someone to go in there.
it just seems like if it's not war, or if it's not like the COVID thing, or if it's not something that's making money for this sort of system, that we're just continually in this cycle of, whether it's that president or this president, we're in the same situation, just different timeline of like, where's our money going to defend or protect or figured this out for this vaccine, and all the tax money goes here, it goes to this pharmaceutical company there. It just seems like we're just continuous cycle, and it's almost like we can't even say it's necessarily a Kamala or a Trump or a Biden or a president. It's almost just like the overarching control. And does that ever really dismantle? I feel like it'd
have to go to zero, I think.
Because like we know everyone talks about the inflation and all this stuff, and it's really just because of the printing of money, and then it's also the taking of our tax dollars. So then the money that we actually make is worth less because of the printing of money. That then our tax dollars and the printing of money just ends up in like some military building bombs or building weapons or defense systems, whatever it is. And it's almost as if we're going to be beholden to that forever as America. It just seems like we talk presidents, and I know how important that is, but then it's like, does that ever actually shift and change where people aren't just constantly paying for wars here or defense there or aid here or, pharmacy, vaccines here? It just seems like and that sounds cynical, but like if I'm just looking at it and then you hear people's perspective on the economy and the way daily life is lived and how expensive things are, it's like, well, that's the only real fix. Like, because then they say, tax the billionaires, all this, take all their money. And I think there was a figure that was like, if you took all the billionaires' money, you'd run the government for like 8 months. If you took all of their wealth.
Not even 8 months.
And so it's like
a few weeks, maybe.
Right. So if that's the case, clearly the government, the way it spends our money is completely and washed. And we're just living in this like giant cycle of debt that we're just continually paying for and then be affected by our dollars just worth less. And we're just, so whether it's a Trump or whoever. So where do we go?
I agree. Well, if you're looking for a guy to give you a hopeful message for the future, you got the wrong guy for that.
Yeah. I think you're smart. I just want to understand if you have any, like, how do you fix that?
Well, I think a lot of what you said is right. And this is what's pretty demoralizing about it, is that we put so much emphasis on the presidential election, and it is important.
Yeah.
The president is just sitting at the top of this gigantic blob-like monstrosity of the federal government. And we see, I mean, Trump was in office and then he left, and they basically undid everything he did in like 10 seconds or most of it. Now, they couldn't do all of it. The Supreme Court is one that they could not undo. They would like to try. They tried, but they couldn't. So there are a few significant things that they couldn't. But a lot of the kind of policy changes and all that, executive orders.
Well, the border thing was instant, and then it was like everyone's here again.
Right. Exactly. Because the federal bureaucracy is run by people, like it's not even really run by the president. And these are all people that have their own objectives and their own agendas. And then the problem is you have a president, and then the next one can come in and just erase all of that. So the only way out of it, that's what I'm saying. I think the only way out of it is with extreme measures. Like, why am I blanking on his name all of a sudden? The presidential candidate, the Indian guy. Vivek Ramaswamy. Yeah, I don't know. Forgot his name. He had a plan to, I think it was, he wanted to fire like half of the federal workforce, I believe, almost overnight. And that's really what it would take. Or maybe it was more than half. But it's going to take something like that. And of course, everyone listens to that plan and they're like, that's crazy. You can't do that. Well, that's what it requires. If you want to actually make a dent, you want to stop the situation you're talking about, then you got to go in and you got to start cleaning house.
I guess Trump wants to bring Elon in to help with the government efficiency.
The jokingly, the Doge thing, but the government efficiency thing. And him coming in, kind of doing what he did to Twitter, I guess, and be like, you guys are all like...
Exactly. It's exactly what Elon did.
We should take a businessman to do that and just like nothing's changed for so many years. There's got to be ways to make it more efficient.
Yeah, Elon did that. He went into Twitter and fired almost everybody. Mm-hmm. And what do you find? Well, the website still runs. It's fine. It's like, it's better now than it was before. And what does that tell you? It's like all these people, I mean, even putting the ideology aside, that are a bunch of, putting aside the free speech issue, which is the most important thing of Elon taking over.
Right.
But also it just shows you that there was all these people working at Twitter who just did nothing. Like they had no reason to be there. And you get that with any large organization. You end up with this bureaucratic phenomenon happens even in the private sector, which is why Elon was able to fire almost all of them. Company still works. So then expand that to the federal government, where you've got hundreds of thousands of people working. How many of them could you just fire tomorrow and none of us would even notice it? Like, it would not change our lives at all because everything would still be working. Maybe even be working better. I mean, there was that video. I don't know if you guys saw this video that was went viral a couple days ago of the hurricane cleanup efforts by FEMA. And they showed there's a video they took of like 13 agents. I think they were CBP, Custom Border Protection agents, who were transporting one like 10-pound log 20 feet because a guy was like cutting a tree, and then they needed to throw the log on a pile of logs 20 feet away. And they had 13 agents standing in a line, just passing the log from one agent to the next so that it could travel 20 feet.
There's no way that's real.
It's 100% real. And it's like, you look at that video, it's a perfect encapsulation of the problem. Because you only need one of those. Like,
We need him. We just got to get
I
stronger
should have
people.
been over there.
Yeah, you need one guy. You need just one of you to just
Brad takes over FEMA.
I'm down.
Right.
Sign me up.
It's a way more efficient. Less
go.
people.
Or, like, go to Lowe's and spend $60 on a wheelbarrow, and you could put 10 logs. You could have one guy transport 10 logs in the time it took 13 to do one.
Real visual
with a wheelbarrow.
representation. Yeah, I get it.
So can someone come in and look at a video like that and say, okay, you're all fired? Like, if this is what you have to do, then you're just done. And, I mean, Trump, he got famous with "you're fired." Like, that was his catchphrase. And I think he needs to get in there and actually do that. And look, he's got nothing to lose. Like, they tried to kill him. They want to throw him in prison. I'd love to see him go in
just clean house.
Right. Like,
End the wars, clean
right.
house.
That'd be amazing.
Lower energy. Imagine he comes in and they just do it. I feel like they're gonna do that. I feel like that's.
I mean,
what's
they've
gonna really
talked about it a
happen.
lot. It seems like it's almost like at this point, if they get in, they have to do that to some degree. I don't know what degree we're
I hope so.
talking
I mean,
about.
it's harder than we can make it sound easy when we're just sitting here.
Right.
It's harder to actually do. But I think a lot of it is hiring the right people. And yeah, if he gets somebody like Elon Musk to help him with that, gets Vivek in there and in the cabinet, like these guys that have done it in the private sector.
And they have RFK on the health stuff.
Yeah.
It seems like he said the first time too he went in and it was so bureaucratic that he didn't know what person to appoint at what head of each department. And he says that's the biggest thing that he's going to fix this year.
Yeah, because most of these guys are in there, like most of these people that have these government jobs, their whole job is really just to justify their job. And they just spend all day doing things to justify the fact that they have a job to begin with. Things that don't need to be done or have already been done or it's redundant. And that's what you get with these organizations. And it's killing us. We're drowning. I mean, the government spent $6 trillion last year or something like that. I mean, this is just.
It's crazy to think what America's become, like, given what the resources and everything that it has, that we've just become this like giant cycle of waste, and still so many people struggle. It's just
on top of that, you got these morons who they think the solution is to just tax more and take more money. They say, oh, the rich aren't paying their fair share and all this kind of nonsense. And I know it's not popular to defend the rich, but once you get up there on the income bracket, like you see that, because if you listen to them talk, if you listen to Kamala Harris, like, well, the rich need to pay their fair share, and you don't make a lot of money, you hear that, you think, yeah, okay, they're not paying any taxes, the rich people. And then you make it up the income bracket, and you look and you realize, like, holy shit, I'm paying like. They're taking half of your money.
Yeah.
What do you mean not paying my fair share? Top income bracket for the federal income taxes is 40%, almost 40%. That's not even counting property and state taxes. And this is all, and it's insane. It's insane to take that much money from people. I don't care if they're rich or not. And all of that is just going to feed this beast, this behemoth, And we got to, it's at a certain point, someone's got to put a stop to it.
I know, it's scary. Next 4 years.
I hope it actually happens. And even in the health sector, like you talk about RFK and Make America Healthy Again, is like how we even got to a point of such an obese and out of shape and just unhealthy country, given the, like, again, all the resources we have. But then it just points directly back to the pharmaceutical industry and them making money from medications. It's like, how does everyone not see how big of a bullshit scam it is? It's like, how did we get here? And then people defend that. It's like, how are we even defending
Because it's so
this?
evil, I think, that, like,
Yeah,
some
like,
people don't want to accept it.
Like, I remember when I was a kid, it was like, yeah, you got to eat this much grains, and grains are good for you. And grains are like the things that cause most of the health epidemic in this country. And we're just like, that was a staple that kids and families were taught for so many years. And it's like funded by the people who were the agriculture industry that was going to make the most money from this to be the case, to then basically us for years. And now we're trying to fix it and unravel it. It just seems like humans are so innately selfish that, like, we're no matter who it is, and no matter at what point does it change, or if there's a new guy here, it's like, let's say we drain the swamp, right? Exactly what we're talking about. Then in another 100 years, is the swamp just a different set of swamp members? Like, it just seems like and I know it sounds cynical and it's sad when I say that, but I can't see it being another way, because we're not going to change humans. Like, that's the sad part.
Yeah. Well, I walked in here feeling okay, but after talking to you,
I'm sorry,
Jesus, dude. You get
I'm
so
sorry. I've just been on it.
I have no hope.
I
have no hope for the future now.
I'm so sorry. I have hope, but it's like,
no, you're not wrong.
It's almost like you
No,
have
it's a
to
good
change the innate nature of humans to not feel like I need more than you every single time.
Yeah, you're not wrong. When you like, part of the problem, you bring up the pharmaceutical industry. People want to be able to trust, like, the pharmaceutical industry. They make medicine, supposedly.
It's doctors, yeah.
I think for most people, your instinct is to trust. It's like, well, they make medicine. We should trust them. And then you find out over time that, well, once you find out you can't trust these people anymore, that's when it's like people don't know where to turn. And with the the vaccine stuff with COVID, I think, was an awakening moment for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But really with the pharmaceutical industry, I mean, you know this, it's like the scandal there goes, the COVID vaccine is just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, they've been getting people hooked on drugs. There's a massive, basically, drug cartel, inventing diseases basically for people and then giving them the cure for it. I mean, the pharmaceutical industry has been doing this for decades.
That's so.
It should have been a major scandal, and it wasn't. That when it was revealed a couple of years ago that, it wasn't even revealed because people that study this stuff already knew this, but it became public knowledge a couple of years ago, for example, that the so-called chemical imbalance theory of depression is not real. It's not true. So the idea that you're depressed because you have a chemical imbalance is made up, not true. And the pharmaceutical industry had been selling antidepressants on that basis to millions of people for decades, telling them that if you're feeling depressed, take this because you have a chemical imbalance in your brain and it will even out the chemicals, whatever that's supposed to mean. And then they come out with this study and they're like, yeah, well, okay, that's actually not true. That's not. So the reasoning behind this drug that this whole classification of drugs that we've been selling and made billions on it was built on a lie.
Yeah.
And it's like that barely even makes a wave anymore because we're so used to being lied to by these people. And that's part of what you're talking about, that the corruption in these institutions is really deep.
So like I said, the question is like, do humans ever innately change?
I mean,
you go ahead and take that one, Matt.
Yeah, I definitely wasn't asking you that question, bud.
I don't think there's an answer to that.
What do you
Why
mean
not?
innately? It depends on what you mean by innately.
You're trying to like rewrite the way humans are sort of wired, it seems. Like to get more, to take more, to have more. Like you can't. You're not gonna.
I think an individual person can change significantly.
Yeah.
But changing people on a massive mass scale is a different thing. It can be done. I mean, it's been done we've seen it done for the worse.
Yeah.
And you could get people to change their behavior. You know, the government's done this. Like, look at just one small example. Nobody smokes cigarettes anymore. People have other ways of ingesting nicotine and tobacco, but nobody smokes cigarettes anymore. And 50 years ago, everybody smoked cigarettes. And how did that happen? Well, it's because the government decided, it's like right when I was growing up, they were telling us about the evils of cigarettes just constantly, just drilling it into your head from kindergarten, basically, because the government decided that this is something they wanted to like. This is a change in behavior that they wanted to see, and it succeeded. And now the younger generation, they don't,
or they just knew they had vapes cooking up, and they were like,
right, exactly.
Vapes instead.
Yeah,
those are bad. Buy these bitches.
They've gone into other things, right? Yeah, vapes and weed. I mean, but so it's not even an improvement, is my point. But they did change that behavior.
They just shifted it. They didn't change it.
Right. Shift. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be cynical. I'm just like, it is what it is. I'm looking at it. I'm like, this is undeniable.
Yeah.
Like, do we?
I don't really want to hang out with you.
I'm sorry, bro.
Like,
Brad just,
I'm
just
so
ruined
sorry.
all our days.
Yeah, dude.
It's just like
I was having a sick day,
and then
too.
everyone talks about shit because like we're getting views, we're getting money, and it's like, dude, is it ever gonna change?
You're right. Nothing.
It's sad.
Everything is terrible,
and it just keeps going.
Everybody sucks.
Everyone's life sucks.
Cigarettes is vapes.
And you know what else? We're all gonna die too. That's the other
So get in the gym.
We're all gonna be dead any moment. So
Get in the gym. Be better individually. Trying to bring it back now,
Okay.
Trying to.
but you can't try to shift that
trying.
into a positive message
Yeah.
Yeah.
at the end.
Nah, you actually.
We're
Really,
all. No.
thanks, dude.
Sorry, guys.
Thanks, Matt. That was
No,
amazing.
run to the
bro. You're a great
pharmacy.
guy.
Hold on. So I guess the one last thing that I'll say then in this regard is like you said, someone could change on an individual level. And I think that's the thing that people have to look towards the most, because that's how ultimately it all, if we talked about the cigarette thing, even though it just warped into vapes, they were like, we all agreed at some point that this was bad. So the question is really like, can people take inventory of themselves and go, what I'm doing is either good or bad? Do I want it to be better, and start to actually change it? The sad part, like I said, is just in relationship to like the overarching thing that you can't necessarily directly change, but I guess you can change, of course, yourself. And I think that's where this kind of like, if I'm trying to summarize it back down to something that could be good, that should be the focus then, because that's all you can actually change. So
Thank you, bro.
That's a good inspiring message.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
I
tried.
don't really buy it.
Yo,
but-
we should all.
it's
Well,
true, though.
we should all go get
That's
lunch.
true,
And Brad,
though.
you keep going.
Huh?
We're gonna go get lunch. You just keep going, bro.
Hey, I'm talking about the hard shit.
No,
man.
this is a great combo. We appreciate you coming through.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Matt, thank you, bro.
We'll put the link to the new movie in the description. It's on dailywire.com now.
Yeah. That's what it
Awesome.
is.
So everyone go check that out. I'm going to watch the full thing.
Wait, it's
too.
not
I
on
haven't got a chance
Netflix.
to
I
watch
could
it.
scroll. I saw something on Netflix. It wasn't that.
It better not be on Netflix. We're gonna
There's
sue
something
their
about
asses
yours
if
on
it is.
Netflix. I swear.
Yeah, no, it's on dailywire.com. Yeah.
He's like, if that's on Netflix,
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we
All right,
appreciate
Matt.
you, bro.
Thank you, man.
Thanks
Appreciate
for coming
you,
through.
Thank you.
thank you, bro.
Awesome.